She thought it was just a harmless dream, until the woman from her nightmares appeared in real life, holding secrets no one should ever know. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now, let's move to this wonderful story. Nora stood in front of the mirror, slowly brushing her hair as she applied a touch of bright lipstick. Her son, Daniel, was already asleep in the next room. It had been months since she'd gone out. Life as a single mother was exhausting, and tonight, for once, she just wanted to feel like herself again. Her friend Lena had agreed to babysit. As Nora changed from one dress to another, she sighed. None felt right. Finally, she chose a simple red blouse that matched her lipstick. She smiled faintly at her reflection, tucked her hair behind one ear, and grabbed her purse. The bar was quiet, dimly lit, with soft jazz music playing in the background. Nora sat alone at the counter, sipping a glass of wine. She had hoped her friend Sophie would join her, but an emergency had come up. It was just her now, and the silence made her feel even more alone. Just as she was about to leave, she turned suddenly and spilled her drink on the man standing behind her. "Oh no," she gasped, reaching for napkins. The man didn't shout. He didn't even look angry. He just smiled gently and said, "It's all right, happens to the best of us." Embarrassed, Nora quickly offered to buy him another drink. "I insist," she said. "It was completely my fault." He chuckled. "All right, then. I'll take a cider." They sat down at a table near the corner. Nora learned his name was Callum. He had just moved to the city from a small town in the north. His voice had a soft, rolling accent that made her feel oddly safe. They talked for nearly 2 hours. Nora hadn't spoken like this with a man in years. There was something comforting in the way he listened, never interrupting, always kind. As the night grew later, they both stood awkwardly, not quite ready to part. "This was nice," Nora said quietly. "It was," Callum replied. Then, without warning, he leaned forward and kissed her. It was brief, almost unsure. Before she could respond, he stepped back. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "I have to go." He disappeared into the night, leaving Nora standing there, heart racing, lips still warm from the kiss. The next morning, Nora hurried to work, pushing aside thoughts of Callum. She worked part-time as an office assistant in a counseling center. "Have you heard?" The receptionist, Marta, asked her. "We're getting a new director today. Big changes coming." Nora didn't think much of it until the office door opened, and Callum walked in wearing a neat gray suit. Her breath caught. "Good morning," he said, addressing the staff. "I'm Dr. Callum Bray, your new director." He looked directly at Nora. For a split second, his face froze just like hers. Nora dropped her pen. He had not mentioned anything about being married. He had not mentioned anything about being her future boss. And then, just behind him, a woman stepped into the office holding a small handbag and wearing a delicate smile. "This is my wife, Ivy," Callum said, introducing her to everyone. Ivy had pale skin, dark eyes, and a quiet presence. She nodded politely and then walked away as if she hadn't noticed the tension. Nora felt like the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. She avoided Callum for the rest of the day, keeping her head down and her heart guarded. But the memories of the kiss, his voice, and his presence wouldn't leave her mind. After work, she called Sophie and told her everything. "You didn't know," Sophie said with a laugh. "But wow, that's a mess." Nora lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the past. She hadn't allowed herself to feel anything for years, not since Daniel's father had walked away. At some point during the night, she drifted into a dream. She was walking through a misty forest, calling out for Daniel. She heard his voice, faint and far. She ran, but the trees kept moving. The air grew heavy. Then she saw a door in the middle of the forest, pure white, glowing slightly. She reached for the handle but woke up before touching it. Nora sat up, sweating. Her heart was pounding. In the morning, as she packed Daniel's school lunch, he noticed something. "Mum, your eyes look sad today," he said softly. Nora smiled and kissed his forehead. "I'm just tired, sweetheart." As she walked him to school and watched him disappear inside the gates, she realized something. The red blouse was still in her laundry basket, stained with wine. She hadn't worn it again. She wasn't sure if she ever would. But deep down, she knew this story had only just begun. Nora tried to act normal at work, even though everything inside her felt twisted. Sitting only a few rooms away was the man who had kissed her, lied to her, and now stood beside his elegant wife, acting like they were the perfect couple. But Ivy didn't seem perfect to Nora. She seemed distant. Not cold, just not quite there. Like she was always watching something no one else could see. A few days after their awkward introduction, Ivy visited the office again. She was dressed in a soft beige coat and wore a scarf around her neck, even though it wasn't cold. She smiled politely at the staff and then walked over to Nora's desk. "You must be Nora," she said in a gentle voice. "Callum says you're very helpful." Nora gave a stiff smile. "Thank you, I try. I'm not working, so I have too much time on my hands," Ivy said, looking around. "I thought maybe we could get coffee sometime." Nora blinked, surprised. "Sure, that would be nice." "Wonderful," Ivy said, already pulling out her phone. "Let me give you my number." Nora entered it quickly, not sure what else to do. Ivy's presence was calm but strange, like a painting that was too quiet. They met for coffee that weekend. Ivy chose a small cafe with a garden. She sat near the window sipping tea and asking gentle questions about Nora's life. "Do you have children?" Ivy asked. "Yes, one. My son's name is Daniel. He's 7. Ivy smiled softly. "I always wanted children, but it hasn't happened. Maybe someday." Nora noticed a small bruise on Ivy's wrist as she reached for her cup. "Are you okay?" Nora asked. Ivy looked at her hand, then pulled down her sleeve. "Oh, that. Just bumped into the kitchen cabinet. I'm always clumsy at home." Nora nodded, but something about Ivy's tone made her uneasy. As they talked, Ivy spoke of her love for nature, how she missed walking in forests and listening to birds. She said city life felt like living in a glass box. "I used to paint a lot," she added. "Trees, lakes, doors." "Doors?" Nora asked. "Yes," Ivy said with a faraway look. "Dream doors. Have you ever seen one?" Nora's hand tightened around her mug. "I've had dreams. Sometimes I see a white door, but I never get to open it." Ivy's eyes lit up. "Same. I always wake up before I reach it, but I think it means something. Like our minds are trying to show us a way out." Nora nodded slowly, unsure if she should feel comforted or afraid. As they walked out of the cafe, Ivy turned to her. "I like talking to you, Nora. Please don't tell Callum we met today. He doesn't like when I mix personal life with his work." Nora hesitated, then agreed. "Okay." Back at home, Nora felt heavy. Her dreams had become worse, more vivid, more confusing. Each time she saw the door, it felt closer, but something was always in the way. One night, she dreamed she was back in the forest. This time, she heard not only her son's voice, but another, a woman whispering, wake up before she finds you." Nora sat up in bed, sweating. Later that week, Ivy invited Nora to her house for lunch. It was a beautiful place, quiet and grand. Ivy led her through the hallway into the dining room. The walls were painted a soft green, and one side of the room had a large painting of a forest. "I did that," Ivy said. "It reminds me of a place from my childhood." Nora stared at the painting. It was the same forest from her dreams. "Do you believe in messages from dreams?" Ivy asked suddenly. "I don't know. Maybe." Ivy brought out a worn notebook. "This belonged to someone I used to know. His name was Elliot. He had the same dreams. He called them messages from the subconscious. Reading this might help you understand yours." Nora took the notebook carefully. "Thank you." Later at home, Nora opened the notebook. The handwriting was messy, but the words chilled her. "Every night the dream door waits. Behind it is peace, but I always wake up before I can go through. Maybe it's not meant to be opened, or maybe someone is keeping it closed." Nora looked up from the page, heart racing. Who was Ivy really, And why did she want to be her friend? Nora's phone buzzed. A message from Ivy. Thank you for today. I feel like I've known you forever. Nora stared at the message, then at the painting in her living room. Ivy was kind, but there was something in her eyes that didn't belong. Nora wasn't sure if she had made a friend or invited a ghost into her life. Nora sat by her window reading the notebook Ivy had given her. The pages were filled with dreams. Strange, soft, dark dreams. Elliot, the man who wrote it, had a way of making dreams feel like memories. He spoke of forests with whispering trees, of footsteps that echoed without sound, and of a white door that appeared in the middle of nowhere. One line made her stop and read it twice. She stands at the door, but not to welcome me. She guards it like it belongs to her alone. Nora closed the notebook. A cold shiver moved down her back. She couldn't explain it, but she felt the writer was talking about Ivy. The next day at work, Callum was quiet. His usual calm voice had sharp edges now. He barely looked at Nora, but when he did, his eyes stayed too long. During lunch, Nora tried to avoid everyone. She didn't feel safe. Not here. Not anymore. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Ivy. Would you like to go for a walk in the park tomorrow? It's been a hard week. We both need air. Nora wanted to say no. She wanted to forget Ivy, the dreams, the door. But something pulled her in. All right, she replied. The next morning was cloudy. Nora met Ivy near the park entrance. Ivy was wearing a long gray coat and carried a small bag. They walked in silence at first. Ivy was the one to break it. I used to come here often, she said. Before we moved. Before the dreams became loud. Nora looked at her. When did they start? Ivy smiled, but not with joy. After the fire. After I lost them. Nora waited. My parents, Ivy said softly. They died in a fire when I was a teenager. I survived. A friend pulled me out. He burned his hands saving me. Was it Callum? Nora asked. Ivy nodded. Yes. We were young. He helped me recover. I don't know if I loved him at first or just needed him to stay alive. They sat on a bench near a small pond. Ducks floated on the surface, untouched by the wind. Ivy opened her bag and pulled out an old photograph. It showed a young man and a girl sitting under a tree. This is Elliot, she said. He was my friend from the clinic. We both had trouble sleeping. He would talk to me about his dreams, about the door. I never believed him at first, until I started seeing it too. Nora stared at the photo. Elliot had sad eyes but a kind smile. What happened to him? Ivy looked down. He disappeared. Just like that? One night he came to visit me. We talked, we laughed, then he vanished. I never saw him again. Nora remembered the line from the notebook. Maybe someone is keeping the door closed. Ivy took a deep breath. Sometimes I wonder if I did something wrong. If I pushed him away when he needed help. Nora placed her hand over Ivy's. You didn't make him disappear, she said softly. You're not responsible for his pain. Ivy looked up, eyes filled with something heavy and unreadable. Sometimes I wonder if I am. They walked again, slower this time. Ivy said she had been painting more, not just forests but doorways, shadows, and reflections. Last night, Ivy said, I dreamed of you. You were standing in the forest. You looked afraid, and there was a second you, watching from behind the trees. Nora froze. I had the same dream, she whispered. They looked at each other, two women holding the same dream in their heads. That night, Nora couldn't sleep. She tucked Daniel into bed, kissed his forehead, and sat on the couch with the diary. The more she read, the clearer it became. Elliot was afraid of someone. He wrote about eyes that followed him, voices in the wind, a friend who wasn't what she seemed. Nora closed the diary and walked to the window. The street was empty. But across the road near the trees she saw a figure, standing still, watching. Her heart jumped. She blinked. The figure was gone. Was it a dream? Or was she still awake? She went to bed, but didn't fall asleep. Around 3 in the morning, her body gave up, and once again she found herself in the forest. But this time, the door was open, and someone was waiting on the other side. Nora stepped forward. "Who are you?" she asked. A voice answered. "Someone who once trusted the wrong person." As Nora reached for the door, Ivy's voice echoed behind her. "Don't go through it. Some doors can't be closed again." Nora turned, but woke up with a scream. Daniel rushed into her room. "Mom, what's wrong?" Nora hugged him tightly. "Nothing, baby. Just a dream." But deep inside she knew. The real nightmare hadn't even started yet. The morning sun rose slowly over the rooftops, but Nora didn't feel its warmth. Her mind was trapped between the dream and what she had read in the final pages of Elliot's diary. The entries had changed. They were darker, scattered with confusion and fear. Elliot had stopped talking about the door. Now he wrote about Ivy. "She stands beside me," one line said. "But she isn't the same girl. She wears a smile that doesn't belong to her." Nora didn't know what to believe anymore. She picked up her phone and sent a message to Ivy. "Can we talk? I need to understand something." No reply. Nora waited a few hours pacing her apartment. Then she made a decision. She walked to the address Ivy had once mentioned, their old home in the hills before the move. Ivy had said it was abandoned, left untouched since the fire. The house was surrounded by trees, half hidden behind tall grass. The windows were covered in dust. The walls, once white, were now gray with age. Nora stepped onto the porch and gently pushed the door open. It creaked but wasn't locked. Inside it smelled of ash and damp air. Furniture lay covered in sheets. Burned marks still scarred the corners of the ceiling. Nora moved carefully through the rooms, her footsteps soft. In what looked like a study, she found more paintings, some half-finished, some turned to the wall. All of them showed forests. One had the white door. She turned around slowly when she heard a floorboard creak behind her. It was Ivy. "You shouldn't be here," Ivy said, her voice calm but sharp. Nora didn't move. "I need answers," she said. "I read Elliot's diary. He was scared of you." Ivy's face didn't change. "He was scared of the truth," she said. "Some people are, even in dreams." "What happened to him?" Ivy walked toward the painting of the white door. "He crossed a line," she said. "He wanted more than friendship. He thought I owed him something for listening to my pain. But he didn't understand me. Not like Callum did." Nora took a step forward. "Did you hurt him?" Ivy looked at her, slowly blinking. "I never laid a hand on him, but I didn't stop him either." The room felt colder now. Ivy reached out and traced her fingers along the edge of the painted door. "He went into the forest that night," she said. "After our last talk. They found nothing. But I know where he went." Nora felt a chill run down her spine. "You mean the deep well?" Ivy nodded. "He believed he could leave his body behind, escape through the dream. Maybe he did, or maybe he fell." Nora's voice trembled. "And the fire? Your parents?" Ivy's eyes dropped to the floor. "That was an accident. I was supposed to be with them, but I left to meet Elliot. When I came back, everything was gone. The house was burning. I couldn't get inside. But Callum was there," Nora said quietly. Ivy nodded again. "He saved me, pulled me from the edge. But I never told him the full truth. Not about the fire. Not about Elliot." Nora didn't speak. She just stood there, watching Ivy touch the painting like it was a doorway itself. "Why me?" Nora finally asked. "Why? Did you want to be friends?" Ivy smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Because you see the door too. Because you walk in the same forest." "We're the same, Nora. We're both trying to escape something." Nora shook her head. "I'm not. Like you. You could be, Ivy whispered. Just open the door. Nora backed away slowly. I'm leaving. Ivy didn't stop her. You can leave the house, she said softly. But you can't leave the dream. Nora ran. Back home, she held Daniel tight and told him she loved him. He smiled and said he loved her too. She needed that. She needed something real. That night, she didn't read the diary. She didn't drink wine. She just lay in bed listening to the sound of Daniel breathing in the next room. But the dream still came. The forest, the door, and Ivy standing in front of it. This time Nora walked past her. She placed her hand on the doorknob. Don't, Ivy said, but Nora looked back at her and whispered, Goodbye. Then she opened the door. On the other side was her mother's kitchen. Sunlight through the windows. Daniel's laughter. Peace. She stepped through. The next morning, Nora woke up calm. For the first time in weeks, she felt rested. She got up, made breakfast, and helped Daniel pack his school bag. She had chosen her door, and finally she had closed it behind her.